Welcome guys, today I'm going to walk you through the science behind 3 measurements we use in your assessment and why they matter more than anything your doctor's probably tracking. These aren't random numbers we picked. Every single one is backed by peer-reviewed research, and together they paint a complete picture of where you're at right now, where you're headed, and what we can do about it. We're going to cover 3 things: the golden ratio, what your ideal body actually looks like based on your skeleton; lean mass index, how much muscle you have and why that determines how long you live; and grip strength, the single most powerful predictor of whether you'll be independent at 80 or dependent at 70. Let's get into it. Here's the overview. 3 measurements, 3 different angles on the same question. How capable is your body? The golden ratio tells us what your ideal body should look like. Not based on some magazine cover, but based on your actual bone structure, your wrist, your knee, and your height. The math determines your targets. Lean mass index tells us how much muscle you're carrying relative to your size. Not your body weight, muscle. The research on this is overwhelming. More muscle equals longer life, period. No plateaus, no ceiling, more is always better. And grip strength. This is the one that shocks people. Your grip predicts your risk of dying and any cause of mortality. Better than blood pressure, better than your cholesterol, better than BMI. The research on this comes from over 1,400 people across 17 countries. This is not debatable. Let's start with the golden ratio. So what is the golden ratio? 1.618. That number shows up everywhere in nature. The spiral of the nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in the sunflower, the spiral arms of galaxies, and it shows up in the human body. The ancient Greeks figured this out 2,500 years ago. Their sculptors, Thaddeus and Polylycos, weren't guessing. They were measuring elite athletes and warriors, and they found the mathematical relationships between body parts and built statues to match. Polylycos literally wrote a book called The Canon, a treatise on perfect human proportions. Now, fast forward to the 1890s, Eugene Sandow, the father of modern bodybuilding, went to museums and measured the same Greek statues. He trained his body to match. He proved the ancient Greek ideas were achievable. The Mr. Olympia trophy is still called the Sandow to this day. Then Steve Reeves in the 1940s took it further. He published specific formulas. If your wrist is this size, your bicep should be this size. If your knee is this size, your thigh should be that size. He competed before steroids, so his proportions represented what the human body can actually achieve naturally. And John McCallum confirmed all of it mathematically. 3 independent systems all arriving at the same numbers. The key insight, and this is what matters for you, that your skeleton determines your ideal proportions. A person with 6-inch wrists has a completely different target than someone with 8-inch wrists. The math scales you to your frame. We're not comparing you to anyone else. We're comparing you to your ideal you. That number on the right, 1.618, that's the Adonis index. Your shoulders divided by your waist should equal 1.618. That's the single most visually impactful ratio. Here's the beautiful part. We only need 3 measurements to calculate your entire ideal physique. 1, your wrists. This is your smallest joint, pure bone. You can't make your wrist bigger by lifting weights. It's just genetic. And from that 1 measurement, we can calculate your ideal chest, biceps, calves, neck, and forearms. 5 body parts, 1 input. Your knee is the same idea. Bone structure. From your knee circumference, we calculate your ideal thigh size. And as we'll see later, thigh development is directly connected to balance, fall prevention, and independence as you age. Your height, this gives us your ideal waist. Height times 0.045. And from that ideal waist, we derive your ideal shoulders using the golden ratio. Waist times 1.618. And your ideal hips using the Reeves formula, waist divided by 0.86. And from 3 measurements you're born with, we can tell exactly what every part of your body should measure. Not what models look like, not what an athlete looks like, what your body, your frame is designed to look like when you're at your best. That's what makes this different from anything else out there. Your goals are genetically yours. Okay, here are the actual formulas. Every single one has been verified across Sandow, Reeves, and McCallum. 3 independent systems, same number. numbers. Waist, your height times 0.45. This is actually a well-established health metric. The waist to height ratio is one of the strongest predictors of cardiovascular disease risk. So the ideal waist isn't just aesthetic. It's the measurement of where your cardiac heart disease risk drops significantly. Shoulders, your ideal waist times 1.618. The golden ratio. This creates the V taper. When someone says a person looks athletic, this is the ratio they're seeing. Chest is wrist times 6.5, straight from Sandow and McCallum. Hips, ideal waist divided by 0.86. This is the Reeves method from bodybuilding, the classic physique. Now, here's the key rule at the bottom. Your biceps, calves, and neck are all the same number. Wrist times 2.5. That's the Reeves symmetry rule. When these three measurements match, the body looks balanced from every angle. Nothing looks overdeveloped, nothing lagging. And that's what people mean when they say someone looks proportional without being able to say why. The example column shows what these look like for a 6-inch wrist individual. Your specific numbers will vary based on your actual measurements. So what does it actually look like when someone hits these numbers? 3 visual signatures. One is the V taper. This is the most impactful one. When your shoulders are 1.618 times your waist, you get that dramatic taper from broad shoulders down to a narrow midsection. This is what people instinctively recognize as fit or healthy. It signals low visceral body fat, a strong upper body, and cardiovascular health. You don't need to be a bodybuilder. Even modest improvements in this ratio creates a visible change. The X frame is number 2. This is the full body version. Wide shoulders taper to a narrow waist. That's the top of the X. Then it flares back out through developed hips, thighs, and calves. That's the bottom of the X. When the upper V and lower V mirror each other, the body looks symmetrical and powerful from every single angle. 3, balance power. This is the Reeves symmetry rule in action. When your biceps, neck, and calves all measure the same, nothing looks overdeveloped or lagging. This is what people mean when they say someone looks proportional. They can't quite put their finger on why, but it's because these measurements match. And here's the key. These just aren't aesthetic goals. Every one of these proportion correlates with the functional health outcome. We'll get into that in the next slide. Now, this slide changes the conversation. This is where people go from, oh, this is about looking good, to, oh, this is about whether I can live independently. Shoulder width. This isn't about aesthetics. Wide, strong shoulders mean your upper body can pull, push, carry, and protect. Underdeveloped shoulders almost always mean an underdeveloped back, which means postural dysfunction, which means pain. Waist circumference. This is the big one. The waist to height ratio is one of the strongest predictors of cardiovascular disease risk in the entire medical literature. A waist that is more than 45% of your height puts you in elevated risk territory. Every inch you take off your waist is a measurable reduction in heart disease risk. Balanced limbs. When one side of your body or one muscle group is significantly weaker than the others, your body compensates. Compensations create movement patterns that lead to injury. Balanced proportions means force transfers efficiently through the entire kinetic chain. Ground to feet to legs to hips to core to shoulders to hands. No weak links. Developed thighs. This one connects directly to the balance and fall risk data. Maximum torque in your leg muscles correlates to your center of balance and pressure when you stumble. Weak thighs don't just look wrong, they're a safety hazard. Falls are the #1 cause of injury death in people over 65. This is what separates us from every other generic fitness program. We're not giving you someone else's targets. Your wrist determines your ceiling. The goals are always achievable for your genetics. No one is set up to fail. Now, let's talk about lean mass index. This is the measurement your doctor should be using instead of BMI, but almost none of them do. Here's the thing about BMI. It was invented in 1832 by Adolphe Quebet, a mathematician astronomer, not a doctor, not a physiologist, a mathematician. He designed it to study population trends in obesity across Belgium. It was never intended to assess individual health. And it has a fatal flaw. It can't tell the difference between 200 pounds of muscle and 200 pounds of fat. A 5'10" person at 200 pounds gets the same BMI whether they're a competitive athlete or completely sedentary. And that's useless. Lean mass index fixes this. Instead of dividing your total weight by your height squared, we divide only your lean mass, your muscle, bones, organs, everything that isn't fat by your height squared. Then we add add the height correction factor because taller people naturally carry more lean mass per unit of height. This gives us a number that actually tells us something meaningful. How much of the tissue that matters, muscle, are you carrying relative to your frame? The thresholds we use come from a 2017 Polis 1 study that uses DEXA scans on over 3,300 adults. DEXA is the gold standard in body composition. It's not a bathroom scale or calipers. These are precise medical grade measurements. Our grading scale maps directly to these population distributions. Here's the research. And it's not ambiguous. 19% lower mortality. This comes from a 2014 UCLA study published in the American Journal of Medicine. They analyzed data from 3,659 older adults. The people with the most muscle mass had a reduced risk of death by 19% for any cause of mortality. 84% risk reduction. When you look at the full spectrum, the most muscular people versus the least muscular, the risk reduction is 84%. The 95% confidence interval was 45 to 96%. That's enormous. For context, most pharmaceutical interventions would celebrate with a 15 to 20% risk reduction. And the third number, zero. Zero ceilings found. The research looked for a plateau, a point where more muscle stops helping. They couldn't find one. The relationship is linear. More muscle, lower risk always. There's no such thing as too much muscle, from a longevity perspective, that is. The greater your muscle mass, the lower your risk of death. This is why we measure lean mass index. This is why it matters. The muscle you carry is literally your insurance against dying. Grip strength. This is the one that makes people sit up in their chair. 67% higher risk of early death with low grip strength. That comes from a meta-analysis of 42 separate studies. Not one study. 42. 140,000 adults across 17 countries. This is the PURE study, published in The Lancet. They found that grip strength predicts your risk of dying from any cause better than your blood pressure. Let that sink in. Your doctor checks your blood pressure every visit. When was the last time he checked your grip strength? And grip is a better predictor, and almost no one measures it. You have a 16% higher risk of mortality for every 5 kilograms you lose of grip strength. That's about 11 pounds. So if your grip drops from 100 to 89 pounds, your mortality risk just went up 16%. Another 11 pounds, another 16%. It just compounds 2.5 times. A Korean study followed over 9,000 people for 10 years. The weakest group had 2.5 times the mortality rate of the strongest group. 84% more likely to die in the next 10 years if you can't pass a balance test. This connects with grip and balance. They're measuring the same underlying system. 50% lower mortality risk in the highest grip quartile from the Health ABC study. Every single one of these numbers is from a peer-reviewed published study. This isn't opinion. This is data. So why does a hand squeeze predict whether you'll live or die? Because grip isn't actually about your hands. It's a window into your entire neuromuscular system. Total body strength. Grip correlates with overall muscular strength more reliably than any other single test. When your grip is strong, it means the entire chain, forearms, upper arms, shoulders, back, core, is intact. When grip weakens, it rarely is just the hand. It's a signal that the whole system is declining. Neuromuscular function. Squeezing a hand dynamometer requires the intact neural pathways from the brain all the way to your fingertips. Motor neurons, nerve conduction velocity, neuromuscular junctions, they all have to be working. When grip drops, it often means the nervous system is deteriorating faster than the muscles themselves. Bone density. This surprises people. Grip strength correlates with bone mineral density, not just in your hands, but throughout the entire skeleton. Strong muscles pull on bones, and bones respond by staying dense. Weak grip often means weak bones everywhere. Metabolic health. Higher grip is associated with better insulin sensitivity and reduced risk of metabolic disease. These mechanisms aren't fully understood, but the correlation is consistent across dozens of studies. Functional independence, opening jars, carrying groceries, getting up from a chair without using your hands, catching yourself when you trip, all grip dependent. Grip strength often drops 2 to 5% per year after 50 without resistance training. Every year you don't train, your grip drops, and it compounds. That's why we measure it, and that's why we train it. And that's why it matters. Okay, now let's bring these concepts all together. These 3 measurements aren't random. They flow into each other. The golden ratio is the structural blueprint. It tells you what your body should look like when everything is in proportion. It reveals where you're overdeveloped and where you're underdeveloped, and where your weak links are in your kinetic chain. If your thighs are 6 inches below your ideal, that's not just a number, that's a balance risk, a fall risk, a loss of independence risk. Lean mass index is the raw material. It tells you how much muscle you have. Do you have enough lean tissue to survive? Are you in the top quartile where morbidity and mortality drops by 19%, or are you in the bottom quartile where risk doubles? This is the fuel in the tank. Grip strength is the performance test. You can have perfect proportions and plenty of muscles, but if your muscles can't generate force and power, it's not protecting you. Grip tells you whether the system actually works. Can you catch yourself when you fall? Can you carry your own body weight? Can your nervous system fire fast enough to protect you? You need all three. Missing any one of them creates a gap, and it accelerates aging. When someone scores an A in lean mass index but a D in grip, they have a muscle that isn't performing. When someone has a good grip but low lean mass index, they're strong but running on low raw material. When golden ratios shows undertrained thighs, balance and fall risks go up, regardless of grip or mass. That's why we measure all three. That's why the assessment exists. Strength is your insurance policy to independence. Everything we just talked about, the golden ratio, your lean mass index, your grip strength, they're all measuring the same thing from different angles. Can your body keep you independent? Can you get out of a chair at 80? Can you carry your groceries at 75? Can you catch yourself at 70? That's what we build here. Not beach bodies, not six packs, independence. The kind of strength that means you'll never need to depend on anyone else to live your life. That's the promise, and the science backs it every word.